over the years, and especially after my April the 9th, 2024 video from Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Sight Sounds Flavors here on YouTube, sightsoundsflavors.com. If at any point in time you like the video, smash that like button. Also, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications so you won't miss a single video. And if you're so inclined, leave a comment. So, I've worked in a variety of jobs. I'm an attorney, so I deal with clients. I have worked in customer service. I've worked the front desk at a hotel. I've worked in restaurants. I've worked in a whole bunch of stuff. And I got to tell you something. How you deal with a Karen or a Darren really depends on the situation. When I think about that video, not even 2 months ago at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport, I don't know how I would have handled the old Karen from Spirit Airlines. Had I been the blonde Karen, and she was a Karen because, look, I think it's pretty abundantly clear by now that she sort of struck first blood by cursing out the airline employee or getting under her skin or offending her to the point that she had to come back not once but twice to try to, seek vengeance. But what do you do if you're a waiter, for example? Wait staff, they hate it when they have a client that you just cannot satisfy. For example, if you're a waiter or a waitress and somebody, says, hey, my steak's undercooked. You take it back, you cook it, you bring it back. Yeah, but now it's not seasoned right. You take it back, you season it. At some point, you start to ask yourself, is this patron just trying to get a free meal? Is this patron ever going to be happy? Is this patron going to leave me a bad tip? Let's talk about Uber and Lyft and rideshare drivers. If you get an Uber, and it says the guy's or the woman's 9-10 minutes away, and, let's say that they run into some traffic, for example, which is common. If you call an Uber, during peak times, rush hour times, it's going to happen, right? And then you start calling that Uber driver nonstop. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, texting them, where are you? What's going on? Are you still coming? You are now in Karen and Darren land. Now, I'll tell you what's going to happen if you do rideshare. If you do that on a rideshare, the driver may not show up. They may cancel your trip. Why? Well, they may think you're going to give them a bad rating, no tip, maybe run a scam. What's a scam? You get in the car, you cancel the trip midway through. And this happens all the time. And then the driver takes a hit unless the driver's on their P's and Q's and they realize that you're a scammer. They may actually take you the whole ride and you actually didn't pay for it. Or you maybe paid like $6 out of a $40 trip. If, for example, you make the Uber driver wait too long, they're only supposed to wait 2 minutes. I've heard some will wait 5 minutes. If you make that poor driver wait 15 minutes and you're constantly saying, I'm on my way, you have also become a Karen or a Darren. So there's a variety of situations where, honestly, waiters and wait staff, rideshare drivers, they're in a position where do they even want to work with you? A rideshare driver, whether it's Uber or Lyft, they're going to hurt their rating by canceling your trip. But if they think that you're one of these people that cannot be pleased, or that's going to scam them, or that's going to one-star them, or that's not going to leave them a tip, they may just take the hit on their own personal rating and just not pick you up. Now, that can be a problem if you're in another city or if you're in your own city and you need to get to the airport or you need to get to a meeting. And by you bombarding that driver with messages and calls, now you're at a severe disadvantage. And let's not forget the pandemic. During the pandemic, the number of drivers reduced significantly to the point, I tell you, March, April, May, June of 2020 was probably the worst of the pandemic. I mean, when they were coming out and saying there's one reported case in Kentucky we were all nuts because, up until that point, there were no reported cases in Kentucky. And at that point, restaurants were closing. The 6-foot thing was being enforced. Everybody had a mask. There were vodka companies up in Indiana, right across the Ohio River, that stopped making vodka and started making hand sanitizer because they were making more money with hand sanitizer than they were with vodka. And they reported on the news and like eBay and stuff like that. People were selling hand sanitizer for like $300-400 a little bottle. And the worst of gouging, and people got prosecuted for that. But where I'm going at with that, during those days, you could expect an hour and a half wait for one Uber. People were scared of catching this virus that was like all over the news, and everything was shutting down, and people were limited to how many rolls of paper towel and loaves of bread they could get. You honestly think somebody was going to stop and go pick random people up in a little car or whatever? No. And in those days, if you started hammering that driver, hey, where are you? I got to get to the airport. Blah, blah, blah. They cancel you. Now you're SOL because now there's no other driver. Now, I'll tell you something else. If you're in a small town, and I don't want to go off too much on a segue here with rideshare, but if you're a Karen or a Darren, you can literally do yourself a massive disservice because nobody will want to work with you. Now, in the restaurant setting, I don't want to get, gross here, but if you send a meal back enough times, I don't know what that kitchen staff will do to it. And if we have some folks that have worked restaurants and they want to share, we got 40 people watching live. Thank you so much for that. But again, if you send a steak back because it's not warm enough or it's not seasoned right, or you wanted medium rare and it's not pink enough for you, they may mop the floor with your steak and bring you another one. I don't know. So again, it really comes down to what is your end goal. There are people that you just cannot please. You just can't please them. And it also comes, Karens and Darrens also come in the way of folks that get pulled over by law enforcement. I got to tell you, in my opinion, a classic Karen or Darren statement is, I pay your salary, which has been heard by millions of police officers, firefighters, code enforcement people, ambulance work. Anybody that gets any kind of state money, you've got these, super entitled citizens not happy with the services they're getting, saying, I pay your salary, which honestly is pretty offensive. It may be true to a certain extent, but they're not saying it for the truth of the matter. They're saying it to try to, imply that a public servant is a public slave. And no matter what this person does, no matter how hard they work, it's never good enough. And so we hear that a lot. And I think that a lot of people are not aware of the fact that they're Karens and Darrens. And I will tell you, as a man, my pronouns are he, him, and awesome, that as a man, I don't think that a lot of guys are aware to the fact that there are a lot of Darrens or Chads or whatever you want to call them. In other words, guys that are very diva-like, guys that, cry a river, take out their violin, they're it's almost like, they're walking around with a cross or something, it's like they feel like they are the victims of the world. Oh my goodness, I had to wait an extra 10 minutes because they couldn't clear a table at Outback. Oh my goodness, I had to wait an extra 5 minutes so the Uber would get there. Oh my goodness, I didn't get, and it just goes on and on and on. So, one of the things that I realized when I put out my video on April the 9th from Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport with the blonde Karen and the old Karen is that a lot of people seemed rather oblivious to the fact that there are a lot of male Karens, whether you want to call them Darrens, Chads, whatever. And, I also think that we have a situation where a lot of our, I would say, not values, but our sort of like societal roles are being questioned, reversed, put on their head. I'm not trying to be sexist, but, there are not many alpha males out there left. When you hear the term alpha male, it almost gets frowned upon, a guy that doesn't complain. You know, a guy that goes to work and does what needs to be done, whether it's sleet, snow, rain, gets all muddy, maybe has calluses on his hands, you know, his back hurts, he just keeps trucking, whatever it may be. But the thing is that now you got so many guys that basically are at the salon getting pedis and manis, and you know, they're moisturizing, and it's all about, you know, self-care, you know what I mean? And they're just basically like, you know what I mean? And honestly, it's like, what happened? Where did the you know, the rugged alpha dudes go, you know? I mean, I'm bald, you know what I mean? I'm bald, I work out, you know what I mean? I don't see a insurance ad commercial on television and start wailing and sobbing. You know what I mean? A lot of guys, I don't know if it's because they're drinking soy milk. I drink soy milk and I'm a manly man, but there's a lot of soy boys out there, you know what I mean? And a soy boy is not something that you aspire to be. I mean, I don't know if they're putting estrogen in the water or what the deal is, but there's not a lot of, you know, rugged alpha males left. I mean, we are becoming, there's women, and then there's this, like, whatever excuse for a man is left, and it isn't very isn't very uplifting, you know. It is not the man of the 1950s. It's like a combination of like your 1960 hippie and, you know, your half-baked pothead, and I don't know what, but it's not a good mix. It's not a good look, and I would like to keep this as much a secret as possible, because, you know, if the Russians or the Chinese found out that half of our male population are a bunch of, I mean, they're going to run right over us. So I want to kind of keep the secret. Please keep the secret that we don't have any Darrens or Chads or whatever here, and that, you know, this is mostly you know, what do you call it? A Karen's issue, but it's not. It really isn't. In any event, guys, you know, I wanted to make this video because I thought it was important to put it out there. You know, the Karen's video from April the 9th at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport has nearly 5 million views here on YouTube. And the associated videos add another 100, maybe 150,000 views on top of that. Over on TikTok, the video's got 13.1 million. On Instagram, 500,000. So there's a lot of views, and a lot of people are like, oblivious to the fact that there are just as many Darrens and Chads as there are Karens. And here is the shocking content of it all. There may be more Darrens and Chads than there are Karens. And don't think I'm BSing you or making something up, because that's not what's going to get hits. So what's going to get hits is, you know, pointing the finger at these Karens. But the reality of the matter is, you can go to a supermarket, you can go to a hotel at check-in, you can, you know, at a rideshare hub at an airport, a restaurant. There are so many guys that cry and whine and sob, you know, that it's just mind-boggling.